So, oh, I just realized I have this in vertical format. Okay, horizontal. There we are. So, it's funny because I was going to talk about how I've been changing formats. No more vlogs. I don't know what it will. I don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing. It will be art related. It will be pop culture related. It will be Gazbot related. A lot of noises from my computer. What I decided to talk about today, I had a few things that were going to be in my vlogs that I've pulled out. And the first one, as you can tell from the thumbnail, is about art classes, art school, figure drawing, however you want to put it. For the last, I graduated School of Visual Arts in New York with, I had a 4-year degree, but I only went for about 2.5 years. Previous to that, I had gone to several community colleges. I went to the Joe Kubert Art School for 1 year. I had a lot of time in school. Like it took me like 10 years to get a 4-year degree, essentially. And since then, maybe like 1 or 2 figure drawing classes here or there, a little bit of training at like 1 or 2 jobs I did, but easily for 10 plus years, I have not taken any sort of art class, online or otherwise, other than maybe watching a YouTube tutorial. About, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago, somehow I became aware of, there's a very small boutique art school. And when I say small, I mean like it's like in a strip mall, you know, it's just like one guy and like, I guess assistants run classes, and mostly for kids, and that's fine. But I forget how I became aware of it, but I became aware that they had this sort of like game show, win, lose, or draw kind of like thing where you go there and they give you like, it was sort of like improv with drawing. So they'd give you you know, hey, we're gonna draw something about a milkshake, and then you try to make something weird or funny or interesting, and you get 5 minutes or whatever, and you draw with a Sharpie, and it's, you know, and it played to my strengths because I haven't done it in a long time, but I was a caricature artist for a decade, you know, so I can draw quick cartoony things with a marker fast. That is something I can still do. I'll probably always be able to do that. And while I'm not the funniest person in the world, I have done some improv. I can make a joke here and there. And so it just played to my strengths. And I went to this, and there's like an audience and you could watch. And I did well. I participated a few times and I got good reactions. And at the end, there was this, my computer keeps making noises. I'm apologizing. I don't know why. At the end, the pieces that were most liked, people would buy. You know, people in the audience, some of whom were artists, some were family of the artists, or parents of teachers. It was unclear. Everybody was sort of affiliated. It was a little bit of a community where like most of the people there somehow knew somebody. You know, I was like the one person that didn't. And but people, you know, they'd buy for $1, $2, $5, $10, whatever, and then that money would go to the school, I think. I forget. It wasn't like a profit thing. It was like back into the school or back into art supplies, or like it was like for a good cause, but not charity. Not like we're helping a food bank, but it was somehow, you know. Anyway, mine did well and made a few bucks. And well, that was the thing. You could keep the money or put it back in the school. Now I remember, and I'm like, well, I didn't even expect to get any money, so put it back into the school, and it made me feel a little awkward. I feel like it was fun. It was a good exercise for a variety of reasons. But then at the end, it was just like, you know, everybody was talking about the things and like the social aspect and like, you know, people bidding on my 5-minute sketch. It just felt a little weird. And it was time for me to go anyway. So I didn't like run out before it was over, but it was a few minutes after it was over. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to leave, you know. The good news is I met a guy there who became one of my kind of local art friends who I'm going to see tomorrow, actually. This ties back in because that was a few months ago. And then about 2 weeks ago, I think now, maybe 3, I've been wanting to do an actual figure drawing class. That's something which I want to do because that's one of those things that's always good. And, you know, when I'm struggling with drawing some legs or making somebody feel like they're grounded on the page, I'm like, I should probably do some more figure drawing. And I was talking with some other local artists and people I kind of sort of know, you know, at varying degrees of vague acquaintance from a coffee shop to like almost kind of a friend, you know, about getting figure drawing going because there didn't seem to be any. And then this art school apparently has figure drawing sometime, but only clothed models, and it's not, you know, and we're like, well, I mean, not that you can't draw a clothed model, but, you know, traditionally you draw a nude model, and we went around and around and couldn't figure out an easy, legal way to do it. Money wasn't even the issue. Like, well, we'll put in some money and kind of get it started, but it was surprisingly difficult. I don't know if it's because of where I live or whatever. So then I don't want to say invited to, because I had to pay $20 for this class, to do this figure drawing class again. The guy who runs the school He's very hands-on and active, and he tries to promote it. And also, if he knows you're an artist and he knows who I am now, like he knows my Facebook, he'll reach out every time there's some kind of event. And a few times he has made me aware of these figure drawing events. And so this time I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go. I was able to make the time, and 20 bucks for an hour and a half, like that seems reasonable for a figure drawing class, I guess. And I went, and this was 2 weeks ago. And I didn't have any apprehension going in because I've been to lots of drawing classes and I'm relatively confident and whatever, but it didn't go how I thought it would go. I got there, I forget what time it started, like 6:30, whatever. And I got there like at 6. And maybe I should have gotten there a little early. Because my experience, I'm thinking of like the classes I've been to, if it starts at 6, people are rolling in around 6 and setting up and farting around, and nobody's really, it's like an office shop, nobody's really ready to go. I got there at 6 and the model was in the middle and everybody was set up and they're like, oh, you're here too? Okay, quick, find a spot. I'm like, oh crap, And because I hadn't done it in a while, it took me a while to set up and figure out what I was doing. And I brought this, which is a tackle box. It's an art bin. I got this from Joe Kubert Art School, which when you went there, you had to pay a certain amount of money to get a certain amount of art supplies, a lot of which you never used, some of which I did, a few of which I still have, like this bin. And this bin is filled with random drawing and art supplies that I've had for years, and it just gets accumulated and I barely go into it. So I'm like, well, I'll bring this. It'll have charcoal and pencils, and it had everything I needed. And it was unclear to me. They said, well, they'll have what you need. I'm like, well, are they gonna have easels or tables or whatever? Because when I had been there previously, it was sort of set up like a game show where it was a bunch of seats and there was a screen and then there was overhead projectors. And I'm like, is this even gonna be, how are they gonna do this? So I brought this drawing board, which is kind of flimsy. I used this a lot back in the day to put t-shirts over and stretch and draw on it. But I'm like, well, if I have a desk, I could kind of lean it on here. And then I had this drawing pad. And I'm like, okay, I could kind of lean it here. And I'm like, this works fine, like this, And I figured what usually, my experience with every art class that involves some kind of drawing is you either get a drawing table, a regular desk, or those sort of stools that have like it's sort of like a stool you're sitting on that has like a board here that you could lean on, or easels. And interestingly, this drawing pad has some figure drawing in it that was, I don't know when it's from. Might have been from School of Visual Arts. It's like I just have had this forever. I was like, oh, I actually have a drawing pad, so I thought I'd have to buy one. But anyway, it didn't have any of those things, sort of. I later found out that they had easels in the back, but it was full. It was small. It was probably about the size of the room I'm in now, which is big for my office, but small for an art class. And there was a young woman in the middle, and but I did not love the way she was dressed. And what I mean by that is, she had almost a costume. Like it was sort of like a period. She had like bloomers on, and she had an umbrella, and she had a beanie on her hair, and there was nothing wrong with the way she was dressed, except I wanted to draw a nude model, and I'm like, well, I can't get that, but I'll draw someone in clothing. And it wasn't like tight-fitting clothes. It wasn't even like a t-shirt like I have. It was bulky, and it was. Not that you can't get something out of that, but that's not what I wanted. And also the umbrella I friggin' hated, because several times she'd open it and put it over her shoulder. And my view would be an umbrella and feet, or she'd turn to the side, and it was awkward, and I just didn't love it. That being said, the circle was filled and everyone was essentially sitting on a folding chair. The thing was, on the folding chairs, basically, let me see if I can get a side view. It wasn't even quite like this. It was more like kind of hunched like this and sort of holding this and kind of, using my strength to hold this up while I drew, or leaning over like this. Both of which are not good ergonomically for my back, my arm, whatever. But even though I'm older, I was physically able to do it without getting a cramp right away, although I imagine if I did it for an hour and a half, it would become a problem. But also, you want to be looking straight and or have your art on an angle. You don't want to have it down and the whole thing was weird. But everybody there was younger, and I say younger, not younger than me, but it was an 18 and up, but I would say the average age was early 20s. That would be my guess, which is fine. So I guess it was a combination of just people not caring or whatever, or being more physically fit or whatever, or having less experience. But eventually they took a quick break. Oh, the other thing was, I said, is it okay to sit here? And it was a chair that was set up. I didn't make it up out of nowhere. And it was next to sort of the teacher who was just somewhere, who were kind of running the class, would give a couple pointers and set the timer and stuff, but they weren't teaching. And another desk that had stuff on it. And so both the person running the class and the model multiple times came back and forth between me where I was like, oops, oh, sorry, and kind of in their way, both while I was drawing and in between. And I'm like, I'm in a bad spot here. And so eventually I moved to the floor over a little bit. And I'm like, is it better here? And they're like, yeah, that's okay. You're not in the way. And they were being nice about it. I'm like, but no, but I am in the way. And even if it doesn't bother you, it bothers me that I keep getting interrupted, when I've got 30 seconds to make a drawing and you're passing by, or I have a minute to get my new pencil and you're passing by, or, it disrupted me. And I didn't get upset about it, but I'm like, well, clearly this is not a good spot, even if you think it is. So I moved. And when I moved, I had this folding chair. And what I did was I sort of put it like this. And it was lower, and I put my board like that, and I was sort of on my knees, sitting on my knees, doing this. And this was better. It was closer to those benches with the, boards. It still wasn't great because I was sort of sitting on my knees and sitting, it was on the floor. It was a little bit awkward. I was very low. And so it wasn't ideal, but it was better than it was. I wasn't holding the board. I was able to just draw. And I again said, am I in the way? No. But then again, they were walking to go out into the office, not as much, but 2 or 3 more times I got interrupted again. So it just wasn't a good spot. And there were a couple breaks here and there. And during those times, it was offered, hey, do you want to move? But it was full. There was no really to move to. I'd have to be like, excuse me, can I go? It would have been a big problem. Or do you want to go get an easel? I'd have to, if I was feeling more obtrusive and assertive, I could have done something, but it wouldn't have been a simple, quick fix. And so the next time I go to one of these classes, which ironically is tonight, it's not for the same type, but I'm going to get there early and get a thing and set up and, to optimize my chances. Because some of this is my fault. I'm acknowledging that. Anyway, the issue is even when I found a better seating arrangement, everybody was close and low. There was no stage or anything like that. So the person was sort of regular flat level and we were all sitting. Well, there was one person standing who had the easel in the back that, but everyone else was sitting or lower like I was. So we were all kind of looking up and close, which can be interesting. But again, I'm used to, you're way back, you're kind of at eye level. Sometimes you're looking a little down, a little up. You could move in, move around. And that's the thing, like, feel free to move around. There was no moving around. You couldn't move around. It would be too disruptive. There wasn't enough room. You kind of were where you were at. And I'm not saying it's just for me. Nobody was moving around. Somebody might look down a little bit or left or right a little bit. But there wasn't much to do. The other thing was the person running it and the model a few times were like, any requests, or do you want me to do something different? And I did have requests. I'm like, could we do longer poses? Could you do a more interesting pose? Could you face me? Could you get rid of the umbrella? But I was the new guy. They were a younger person. I didn't want to I don't know. I felt uncomfortable giving requests because the other thing is, this person was not a model. And this has nothing to do with them as a person, their looks or anything like that. I mean, I don't think they were a professional model. I don't know if they were paid to be there. I don't know if they were a volunteer. I don't know if they were another artist filling it. I don't know where they came from, what their background is. Maybe they want to be a model. Here's why I say they're not. They didn't have any stamina. They couldn't hold a pose for a minute or two. And I don't know that I could either, but I'm not trying to be a model. To the point where at one point they felt faint and had to lay down and drink water. And I felt concerned for them, but I'm also like, what is going on? It was not hot in there. It was not overly strenuous. The whole class was an hour and a half. We had multiple breaks. None of the poses were that long. They weren't doing any kind of crazy acrobatic poses. And just after a few minutes of doing this, they're like, "Ooh, that was too much." And I'm not trying to make fun of them, but that's not, I've never seen a model do that, Similarly, as we got to some of the longer poses, we started off with 15 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, whatever. Towards the end, when we had a 15-minute pose, the person running the class oh, just so you know, in case you haven't done this before, when we do a longer pose, after 4 or 5 minutes, we'll let the model take a break and then come. I'm like, really? For a 15-minute pose, they take 2 breaks? I've never seen that before. For a very long pose, maybe. And then there's, and again, it's not the end of the world, but I'm just it felt like some random person that was in the class decided to be a model that day, wearing whatever they happened to wear. And again, if it was free, fine. But I did pay $20. I felt like it should have been a real class or a real session or whatever. The other thing is, we did a bunch of different mediums. That was the one thing, the person in class, hey, try a Bic pen, try markers, try this. And I was already cycling through different mediums because I forget what I wanted to use. And that was sort of good and bad because I started off using charcoal when I really wanted, on 15-second poses. And it had been so long. That's the other thing. I was in my head, I was doing terrible. The first half of the class, I was like, I can't draw. What am I doing? I'm terrible. I don't have enough time. I'm used to drawing quickly, like I said, with that other class. But with that other class, weirdly, it was the median age was my age or older. And the median talent level or skill level was my age or below. or my skill level or below. And here I felt like everyone was younger and as good as me or better. So it was this weird inverse where I was like, oh, I felt like a superstar before, and now I feel like a loser. Not that anyone's judging me, but I'm just being honest about how I felt. And then it was a thing like, oh, everyone could see, and I'm like, oh, I could draw it in my head real quick, but I'm trying to actually make it look like what it looks like. But I'm used to kind of building a body and then clothing it, but this is all clothes. I guess I'm sort of drawing out, oh, that was 15 seconds, oh, I shouldn't have used this charcoal. Let me use this colored pencil. And I have a bunch of colored pencils and charcoal pencils, and all the lead was broken in them. So I kept breaking, sharpen, 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 break, sharpen, 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 break. I did a lot of that. I made a big mess on the floor, tried to clean it up. I'm not blameless in this. I wasn't doing a good job either. But it was sort of like, I feel like the class was failing me and I was failing the class in equal measure. I was unprepared. The class is kind of amateurish. But by the end, when we started doing the longer poses, then it started being a thing of like, oh, okay, I'm having a really hard time with a minute gesture drawing, but a 15-minute pose I could do in like half that time, and then I'm just going in and cleaning up. And I wasn't doing great work, but the last couple drawings, I'm like, this is like what I kind of remember being able to do when I do this sort of thing. So hopefully it's just a matter of knocking the dust off. The other thing that was, there was a lot of commentary, a lot of talking. It felt like everybody knew each other. I don't know if they went to class together or if they would, I don't know. Everybody seemed to know each other to some degree. And there was a lot of talking, which is fine. I don't mind that. But it felt I felt unintentionally cliquey. I think they were friendly people. I don't think they were trying to be exclusionary, but it was a lot of in-jokes, a lot of referencing, Marty says that. Oh, it's something like cupcakes, well, JoJo, and it just felt weird. It was like, what am I doing here? Like, is this a closed, how come I'm the only one that, so it just felt a little weird. And I sort of just listened to it like a podcast or something and didn't really participate. And I'm usually pretty chatty. Once or twice, I did try to say something, and while people weren't mean or anything like that, it was met with like, it's just like, okay, like somebody said something about the model with the umbrella is like, oh, I have friends that are like, oh, you spend so much on the umbrellas and blah, blah, blah. And then I have other people who like, they never use an umbrella. I'm like, yeah, I don't think I've ever owned an umbrella. And she's like, okay, anyway, I was like, sorry, I thought I would join in. I made a mistake. And so it encouraged me to keep my mouth shut, which was fine because I needed to focus on my art anyway. But it was just such a weird experience that I haven't had in a figure drawing class, and it was opposite of the previous experience I had at this place. Then at the end, there was no thing about like money or tipping or anything like at the game show thing, but the announcer, the host, the person running it, said, and there's always this, you don't have to, but whenever someone says you don't have to, you have to. You don't have to, but a lot of times what we'll do is, pick a drawing you like and give it to the model. I'm like, oh, I've never done that before. I mean, well, I can't say I've never. It's not unheard of that an artist might give a drawing they did of a model to the model. But the idea that everybody in the figure drawing class gives a picture to the model, it's like, that's a lot of random art for this model to even want. Do they even want it? I was not feeling confident and comfortable with my art. So like the only one I even liked was like the last one I did. So I'm like, I guess I'll give her this one. And then they took a picture of it to like, as use as an example. And I took a picture before, here it is. And I'll probably throw a few others up as I'm talking about this, but it was just, I felt compelled to do it, and I didn't care. It's not like I needed it for anything, but it was just like, oh, I guess you have this now, sure, fine. And it was just odd, and I guess that's kind of it. Here's the thing, I don't regret going. It took me out of my comfort zone in a couple different ways, and just doing some figure drawing, even if it's bad figure drawing, is good for my art. I'm going to an art class, a different art class that's free tonight with a friend of mine. I don't know what the difference is. It's saying drawing in the round, which makes me think of being around a model, but maybe it's going to be still life, which I am not a huge fan of. But again, I'm just trying to be a better artist and try to do things, and this is what's available locally. I've also thought about doing online classes, but schedules are difficult for me. So anything I could just go to like a one-off is much better. But yeah, I don't know. What are your experiences, especially if you haven't been to an art class in a while and you go back, or if you never have and you go, did you find weird things? Like, it's just one of those, what the weirdest thing about it is I felt like this is something I've done many times in my life, not recently, and I thought I knew what to expect going in, and I'm like, this is not at all what I expected, and in a way that I didn't love, but that I'm gonna continue to try to make work to some extent because I feel like it's good for me. So this is my first new format video. Next week, I'm not going to be talking about figure drawing or art class. I don't know what I'm going to be talking about. Maybe I'll even put up another video this week. This video I think is going to be pretty long. So it's weird. It's not like it's a short video, but it's like I'm not recording a little bit every day. It's just like yesterday and today I'm like, I'm going to talk about this, and here it is. So anyway, thanks for listening. I'm Gazbot. I'll see you later. By the way, I have a comic, The Horror Ray 4, 3 issues out. I'm working on issue 4 now. You can find it anywhere online. It's a kaiju comic.